Okay, so hi guys, we are the podcast future. Yeah, okay. Not about it. Okay, hello guys, we are the podcast Food, Hunger and Future, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk about one specific organization, and that organization is FAO. So, think about your last meal. Where did it come from? How produced it? How much information was behind that plate? Behind every meal, behind every piece of food that you eat in the day. If eating for essential for surviving, or it was more like, I don't know how can I say.
I mean, I think that this is not like a strict formal podcast. I think that the perspective that we want to give to all whoever watch this is how this organization interact with your life every day, and in basic terms how you can understand it.
Well, I'm Federico. I will focus on the on where all of this came from, all the historic context, because before the FAO exist, there were ideas, failures, and many in California who believed in sharing agricultural information could change the world. And my role is to show you that hunger is not an accident; it's a result of decisions and systems, and I will provide you this historic context.
Yeah, I'm Victor. I'm going to basically focus on achievements, innovation, and concrete results that this organization has had, and this is going to lead to an uncomfortable question that it is: what are the real results that this organization have, and if it is like if it actually work, or if it is just a symbol.
Well, I'm Rafa. I talk about things that no one wants to say. How many people are dying due to the lack of the good access and the food, and how this uncomfortable truth is and also part of the solution.
And finally, I am Ramiro, and I'm going to talk about some statistics like environment, climate change, and sustainability.
Okay, before we begin, I want to invite you to think about something simple but powerful. Food. Not just something we eat every day, but a system behind every meal. There is an entire structure. There is production, distribution, information, decisions, and in many cases there are inequality. So let me ask you a serious question. If food is essential for survival, why has it been so difficult throughout history to ensure that everyone has access to it?
Well, I think that it could be difficult because in the beginning the humans take his meals in the hunting. So I don't know. I think it's the beginning of that difficult. I don't know how you guys.
I consider that nowadays it's not the same way to get access or eating the same food compared with the almost 50 years ago. What would you?
I think that I don't know, maybe this started before. No, I mean after the First World War, because I think that it's a moment where the society was like improving technology, and they have like the resources to give food to everyone, but we still have like this inequalities since that time, where there were some places that didn't have the resources, or their governments lose so much because of the war, and I don't know, things like that.
Well, this conversation is built around that question because it's a very complex question. So we're going to be looking at this in 4 parts, focusing on the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. But more importantly, this is about how the world has tried to organize itself to deal with hunger, and not as an isolated problem, but as a shared global responsibility. And well, let's go back to the late of the 19th century, to a place that might seem far from global politics, which is Sacramento, California. There we find a man named David Lubin. Lubin was a businessman, but also someone deeply interested in agriculture. Why do you think farmers back then struggled so much, even though they were the ones actually producing the food?
I don't know, maybe something related to resources, like lack of water or seeds. I don't know.
Well, Lubin observed something that at first might seem technical, but was actually very important. Farmers were producing food, but they were operating without information. They did not know international prices, they did not know market trends, and they did not know what was happening beyond their immediate environment. And meanwhile, larger companies had access to networks, data, and communication. So this created an imbalance, and Levin understood something critical. Food problems were not only about production, they were also about access to knowledge, and this led him to develop a new idea, an idea that at that time was highly ambitious. A global system where countries would share agricultural information openly. Today this might sound normal, but at the beginning of the 1900s, it was not. Levin spent years trying to convince governments, and he traveled to different countries, present proposals, and explained his vision, but most governments were not ready, and they did not see agriculture as something that required international cooperation. So also we have here a key reflection. Sometimes the biggest challenge is not solving a problem, it's convincing others that the problem exists.
Sure.
And after facing rejection in several places, Lubin traveled to Italy. There he met King Victor Emmanuel III. And this moment is important because it shows how ideas sometimes need the right context to succeed. Italy at the time had a strong agricultural base, and the king understood that improving agricultural systems could benefit the country. So, unlike others, he listened, and more than that, he supported the idea. And in 1905, with this support, the International Institute of Agriculture was created in Rome. This institution marked a turning point. For the first time, countries agreed to share agricultural data in a structured way. The institute collects statistics, published reports, and creates a centralized system of information, and this allows government to compare production levels, understand trends, and make better decisions. And this worked as a very precedent to the FAO. It was in a way the first FAO, and Well, all this may seem basic today, but at the time it was a major innovation. However, it also had clear limitations because it focused on information, but it did not have the authority to intervene in crisis. But even with these limitations, it achieved something fundamental. It introduced the idea of international cooperation in food and agriculture. As the 20th century progressed, the world became more interconnected, but also more unstable. Economic crises affect production, populations increased, demand for food grew, and then the Second World War. This was not just a political or military conflict, it was also a crisis of survival. And agriculture production declined, infrastructure was destroyed, and transportation system collapsed, and food became scarce in many regions. And this created a new level of urgency. And for the first time, global leaders clearly understood food security was not just national responsibility, it required international coordination. And in 1943, while the war was still ongoing, representatives from 44 countries met in Hot Springs, Virginia. This meeting was known as the United Nations Conference on Food and Agriculture. Think about the timing. In the middle of a global conflict, leaders were already planning for peace, and one of the key figures present was Franklin D. Roosevelt. He introduced an important concept, freedom from want. So, I have a question for you. Roosevelt called food access a freedom. How do you think this changed the way people saw the problem of hunger from that point on?
Well, firstly, the sovereignty of each country, because the sovereignty of each country determine how the people produce their own food. Also, they don't depend, or exists the possibility that they don't depend on other countries to get access another kind of food. As example, here in Mexico, we have a lot of biodiversity. That's mean we are one of the main countries that the food has a great access for every human. Not only it not depends of their social status, but unfortunately the prices here in Mexico, or well, here in our city, we are in these times they are going to coming down and coming up.
Yeah, it depends of where you live. For example, a local or personal example is that my brother have a girlfriend in Chihuahua. So when he goes to Chihuahua, he says like it's very difficult to have a pretty good vegetable, and it's more easy have a really good meat.
I mean, I think that it is related to freedom because as good as you're eating is how good you perceive your environment and the things that you are going to do. Because if you're not like worried about what you're going to eat, am I going to have a good meal, you're going to be able to think about your own projects and the things that you really want to do and know about something basic like eating.
Well, as something related with Victor said is that this idea established that access to food was not optional, it was a basic human right. And this shifted the conversation. Food was no longer just an economic issue. It became a moral responsibility, and the conclusion of the conference was clear. The world needed a permanent organization dedicated to food and agriculture. And 2 years later, in October 1945, representatives met again, this time in Quebec City, Canada, at the historic location, the Chateau Frontenac. And inside that building, representatives from the 44 countries signed the constitution of the FAO. This was the official creation of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and it became one of the first specialized agencies of the United Nations, and its mission was clearly defined: to improve nutrition, to increase agricultural productivity, and to improve the lives of rural population. This moment was not just symbolic, it was structural, and for the first time the world had a permanent institution dedicated to food at a global level, and the first director of the FAO was Lord Boyd Orr. He was a scientist and a strong advocate for global cooperation, and he believed that hunger and conflict were deeply connected. And in 1949, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and his message remained relevant. Peace cannot exist where there is hunger. In its early years, the FAO operated from Washington, D.C., but in 1951, it moves its headquarters to Rome. The FAO moved from Washington to Rome in 1951. Why do you think they choose Rome as their permanent home? Based on what I said before.
Probably because they don't want to depend directly from the government of the United States. As we know, the FAO is a dependency from United Nations. Probably in this fact, they have the chance to conform another webs to send the message from other nations. As we know, the manager of the United States is always getting in troubles in other nations, in different provinces.
Well, it's even more simple as that. This was not just a logistical decision, it was a symbolic one, because Rome had been the home of the International Institute of Agriculture. As I mentioned before, this was like a little FAO. It was the first organization dedicated to food. So the FAO was in a way continuing that legacy. And the building itself has an interesting history. It was originally constructed for government purposes in Italy, and today it serves as the FAO headquarters, located near the Circus Maximus, and it has a special legal status. It is considered international territory. Today the FAO operates worldwide, and it works in 6 official languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. And this reflects its global nature. It brings together countries to share knowledge and coordinate actions and make decisions. So what does this story tell us? I think that the FAO is not just an organization created in 1945. It is the result of decades of ideas and efforts and global challenges, and it began with a man who believed in sharing information, and it was supported by government willing to act, and it evolved through crisis, and it became a global institution. And so this was the foundation, but this led us to one final question. If we have built such a system, why does hunger still exist today? And that is what we will explore in the next topics. And thank you for listening to this first part.
So I'm in charge of this second part about the question if FAO is really doing something or if they are just a symbol. So as Federico mentioned, This organization has existed since 1945, and just to remember, its main mission is to fight hunger, improve agriculture, and help countries build sustainable food systems. But a big question comes up from this. Is FAO actually producing real results, or are these initiatives mostly symbolic? So let's start. Before talking about the real results, I think that it is important to mention from where they are from where they are getting money to work. And well, the FAO is funded mainly by its member countries, which currently include more than 190 nations. These countries contribute to regular budget calculated based on the size of their economies. For example, the largest contributors that this organization has is the United States, China, Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom. And then they give money according to how much according to how strong their economy is. So yeah, that's why countries like the United States or China are the ones that are giving more money to these organizations, because they are the ones that also have the strongest economy in the world. So FAOS is also founding from voluntary contributions. For example, every people or even other organizations that are smaller, they can contribute with money and to help to this technology developing related to food. So having already mentioning this, let's continue with the second segment, that it's the current innovation. What are they doing currently to improve food conditions? Well, one example that we have is the Global Agri-Nuke Challenge, that it's an international competition organized by the FAO with universities and technology patterns. That I think that this is a cool initiative, because they are like encouraging university students to participate in this organization to help people. And the idea behind this initiative is invite young innovators and startups from around the world to develop technological solutions that improve agriculture and food systems. In 2025 edition, the challenge received more than 500 proposals from nearly 100 countries. Some of the finalists created technologies that are already being tested in real environments. For example, one project developed a smart water filtration and monitoring system from poultry farms. In pilot tests, the system reduced poultry disease rates about 67% and reduced mortality around 58%. This was implemented mostly in African countries that have lack of water and they have like these bad water conditions because of the water is polluted. And another innovation was a plant disease detector sensor designed to identify crop infections early, so farmers can intervene before losing their harvest. These kinds of experiments show how FAO is trying to integrate digital technology, sensors, and artificial intelligence into agriculture. However, most of these projects are still in pilot stages, meaning that they are not being tested locally and have not yet transformed global food systems. So let's move on to segment number 3, that is innovation forums and technology discussions. Well, another example of FAO innovation efforts is the Science and Innovation Forum, an event where scientists, governments, and companies discuss emerging technologies in agriculture. One recent focus has been artificial intelligence in food safety. As I mentioned, they have developed like these sensors that can detect bacteria in the food, in the water, and then they can prevent diseases. But AI systems can analyze large amounts of data from farms, transportation networks, and food processing plants to detect contamination risks faster than traditional methods. However, it is important to note that forums like this are not immediately produce measurable outcomes. These ones are just like initiatives, plans, and proposals, but not like real actions. So let's talk about a real achievement that FAO has reached. And one of the biggest examples that we have about this is the Codex Alimentarius created in 1961. And I want you to remember this date because as we checked, FAO was found in 1945. Yeah, it was founded in 1945. So this happened. This is one of the biggest achievements that they have, and it happened not that long from their founding. So the Codex Alimentarius, it is a global set of food safety standards developed jointly by FAO and the World Health Organization. Today, these standards guide food safety regulation in most countries and help prevent unsafe food from entering international markets. Another major achievement is the International Treaty and Planning Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture adopted in 2004. This treaty protects crop biodiversity, allowing countries and researchers to share plant genetic materials. That means that the farmers are scientists that can develop new crop varieties that are more resistant to drought, pest, or climate change. So let's move on to the next question. So mentioning all these achievements, all these proposals, all these things, is FAO really effective? On one hand, some FAO initiatives, especially innovation competitions and forums, can seem slow or symbolic because their results take time to scale or to really be used in real situations. And in the other hand, if we look at the long-term perspective, the FAO has produced major global impacts. International food safety standards, crop biodiversity protection, yearly warning system for famine, regional reductions in hunger, and better coordination of global food markets. At the same time, it is important to remember that FAO depends heavily on government funding and international cooperation, which can influence both the speed and the direction of its actions. So I think that this last part is related to what my classmates said, that at the beginning of this foundation, they wanted to get funding from governments, but they didn't participate so much in something like this because, I mean, it is not charity, but it is a big investment for food, and maybe it is not the priority in your country. So I want you to talk a bit about this because, I mean, from our own perspective, I think that they have like these plans, they have like these new technologies, and they have like these standards that the food must have to be consumed around the world. But I mean, this organization has existed since so many years ago, and I think that we still have hungry problems, and we don't have like real solutions, and they are like always saying like we have this plan or they have this new technology, but they are not really taking action.
I think that all these initiatives sounds pretty good on paper, but when you have to become reality, it's where the real problems came. And also we as individuals, we really don't care much about this because, for example, we used to waste too many food. And for example, when you go to a restaurant or even in our own houses, we used to waste so many food. We drop all the food to the trash, and also I think it is because there is a unequal distribution of food, and I think that also affect the climate and all that, because maybe things that we can plant in here, it will not grow in other parts of the world. So I think that instead of doing more initiatives, we should really take actions on the real situations we are having, taking into account all these factors, and that's where I think the problem still exists.
And I mean, I don't want to be mean, but let's think about one example that I mentioned, that was like this technology that can detect diseases in the water. That's something that it's affecting African people, not me. Like, I'm not going to invest, I'm not going to give money to that for that research, because here where I live we have clean water, and we're not so much into other problems from other countries, you know. So think about, maybe the FAO can say, I don't have like enough economical support to scale these proposals, but I would not invest in something like that if it's not affecting me, you know.
I think it's true what are you saying, but I think that is one of the main problems also.
Yeah.
Because people is not, I think that most of the people is not taking into account this problematic because they don't have the need. And even before this, I did not really care of that, but I think that is something we should start to think about, because from now to the future it would be more difficult, I think.
Yes, and we just take it for granted that we don't have problems with food. We don't have this kind of problem, so I don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly, because as you mentioned, we are lucky to live in this kind of area, because compared with the rural people, probably they don't have the same opportunity or the same access to take food from the crops or in your local market or in a supermarket. As simple consumers, we don't have this kind of troubles. Just going we pay and we can the food in your hands. You only concerned about how to prepare. But compared with other people that unfortunately they don't have money or they don't have a job to get for even drinkable water, this is a measure that the FAO try to maintain in order, because obviously, as you mentioned, the FAO is they try to focus on the real problems, but they don't attend these groups because because it's more difficult to go in there.
So just to conclude this chapter, I think that we have to consider that if we really want FAO to take real actions, it's going to happen just if every government, if every person have the priority to improve food conditions. Because I think that the history is just repeating. As we mentioned in the introduction, governments didn't want to participate so much in this organization founding because it was not the priority to improve food conditions, and this is happening again. Right now we have different global situations that are not allowing all countries to focus on food improvement. So yeah, also related to the food conditions, I think that it is important to talk about the security. So let's move on to next stage.
Let's continue. As we know, every year 5 million people die from infections caused by microbes that no longer respond to medicine. That's more than twice the population of Jamaica. Part of the problem starts where you might least expect, in animal feed. We're talking about the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the FAO, and its fight for global food security. Not just more food, safer food, more resilient food, and frankly, the limits of what one UNEP agency can do. The FAO run risk assessment along the feed supply chain, looking for contaminants and pathogens. Why? Because contaminated feed can cause over 200 different diseases, and antimicrobial resistance is one of the scariest consequences. But is a paradox. According to UNEP, pilot France to produce about 6 million tons annually of therapeutic feed ingredients, about 7.77 kilograms per person. That help treat children with severe malnutrition. The same system that can poison and also save lives. That's the complexity that the FAO deals with every day. When a crisis hits, a drought, a flood, or a war, the FAO doesn't just study the problem, it acts. By late 2 years ago, the FAO had reached 22.1 million people in 60 countries. How rapid needs assessments can transfer agricultural relief and rehabilitation, and they don't work alone. It's supposed that they coordinate closely with the World Food Program and with local, national, non-government organizations. The goal is not just to prevent famine today, but to build long-term resilience so the next crisis doesn't become a catastrophe. Remember this number, 75%. That's how much of the world poor slab in rural areas, and most depend on agriculture. That's why FAO pushes for sustainable food system. 4 dimensions: availability, access, utilization, and stability. Obviously, the climate in smart agriculture, like crop rotation, cover cropping, integrated pest management. It's not only to produce food, to protect the soil, water, and biodiversity for the future generation. Agriculture can be the solution to poverty, but only if it's done right. You may not have heard of the Codex Alimentarius, or well, as Victor mentioned before, this committee protect us every day, because they manage how to the ingredients or many products are evolving our foods. And doesn't matter if they came from the corpse or if they are created in a facility. This committee tried to avoid how the contaminants could affect in our organisms. But here's the hard truth. The FAO has structural problems, as Victor mentioned too. Between 2014 and 2015, its total budget was $4 billion. About 70% of that $3 billion came from voluntary contribution, as Federico mentioned, how the FAO could be targeting this kind of problems. The money that this donor can choose to give or not is not mandatory. The funding is falling. By the last year, voluntary contributions are expected to drop to $1.5 billion, a 15% decline. So that means the major partners like the USAID are reducing their support by this institution. Meanwhile, there's a gap between objectives and results. The FAO might train thousands of farmers, but if roads are broken or markets doesn't exist, could be exist a little change. These evaluations recommend better exit strategies, sustainable plans, and gender mainstream. As we know, nowadays, more than 50% of agriculture is coming by the women. So this is another point of view because we want aspect of this kind of activities. The principal hand of labor is created by the men, but unfortunately the women try to do that in every continent. Most commonly with the poor people. Now, if this means the FAO doesn't save lives in places like Somalia and Afghanistan, its agricultural support has shown high cost effectiveness, but good intentions are not enough, as before we mentioned with my colleagues they say. The FAO needs predictable funding, strong coordination with partners like the World Labor Organization and the OCHA, and global standards like those from Codex, because this committee, even if they don't create local plans, they try to avoid these problems because it's different how to the regulations in Europe to produce any kind of food here in America are done the same actions to create. So, well, what do you think about the quantity of people are dying before the lack of food?
I think that it is a very important number, and we should start to do something else, not just say like, oh, poor people. I think we should start to do specific actions. I know that we as an individuals, we cannot do much, but maybe we should start to put some pressure on the different organizations in order to they get on uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and they start to do very or more serious action, not only say, we have X initiatives or something. I think that they help once and they not appear anymore. So I think this should be something we should do very constant.
Okay, well, let me do another question. Or probably you know that Nestle, this company, evolved different brands to send or produce different kind of foods along the world. But what do you think about this company? The president wants an initiative to create to pay for the water as a resource. As we know, the access of the drinkable water is a right, even the good access of the food. But this man wants to the ordinary people pay more for this resource. What do you think about that?
I think they talk in in his privilege, so they don't care about the ordinary people.
I agree with Ramiro, but I think water is a human right. We shouldn't monetize the water, but I think that if we have that money factor that push us to a better use of the water, if we pay for it, we will not waste it because it will hurt on our wallet. But well, from that perspective, I try to see the good in this. But my main opinion is that we all have the right to the water, and we should not be conditioned to that. We based on our money.
Well, I agree with your opinion. Unfortunately, the the manner that we get access of the bottled water, this this presentation of this product probably stay with contaminated because the plastic pollute the water that they contain, but unfortunately the most of people they don't have information from this condition. So it's interesting how the big companies try to expand their impure, but unfortunately we must pay for that, for the progress. So another opinion that you want to mention from that?
No, let's move on.
Okay, but well, in my point of view as a food engineering, FAO doesn't have the measures to take advantage.
Perdóname,
Well, to sum up my participation as a food engineering, the Codex Alimentarius is important for every country to develop in their own industries, because it's not the same that we are consume any kind of products for for security. In the past, we don't concern about how the packing or the products are mixed with different chemicals, but nowadays we don't know, we don't have certain that we consume in the next 50 years. So it's important to maintain the zero hunger, but unfortunately, not all the people have the good access for the food, natural or processing food.
Now, I'm gonna ask you something. What do you think that of these three topics that I mentioned, what is the most important and why? And
Well, I consider the environment because it's the beginning of all the creations.
okay,
I mean, climate change, because it is something that is affecting globally.
I also think that environment because, as I mentioned before, the region is very important for agriculture, and surely many countries struggle so much with this, and they depend on from others to have a good access to certain products.
actually, the three of you have a correct answer because these three topics are related and they have the same importance. So, and why I say that? Because climate change is already affecting how we produce food, and we are seeing more droughts, more extreme weather, more floods, heat waves, and all of that makes it harder to farmers make food. And the environment is like, if the environment don't have these qualities to make this kind of food, and it's more important that if the land is fertility or not. So in that instance, we have the sustainability. So I'm going to talk about a specific statistics about every topic. For example, in environment, around 32% of the world soils are moderately to high degraded. About 1 million people live on degraded agricultural land, so they don't have the same situation. 75% of crop diversity has been lost over last century. Agriculture is the main driver of deforestation globally. Nearly 1/3 of all food produced is a loss of waste. So, if in basic terms we are destroying the world,
For sure.
Some rude facts.
some root facts, and we have another ones. For example, climate change. In the climate change, in the part of agriculture, forestry, and land use generate about 21 and 37% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The entire food system contributes up to 1/3 of total emissions worldwide. Climate change could reduce crop yields by up to 10% by 2050. Extreme weather events, droughts, floods, heat waves are becoming more frequent and more intense, and they affect all the world. Agriculture uses about 70% of global fresh water, increasing vulnerability to climate change. And with the part with sustainability, we have that sustainable agriculture can reduce emissions while improving productivity and food security. Around 28% of the global population's face food insecurity, showing current systems are not sustainable. Reducing food loss and waste could significantly improve resources efficiency. Climate smart agriculture is a key of FAO to a strategy to adapt to the climate change, and there is a growing need to balance food production with environmental protection and the economic development. Because if we explode some of these areas, we don't have this kind of sustainability and we have too many problems. Pues muy bien, no me estoy trabajando mucho, no estoy haciendo pura mierda.
No, está bien el arrojo de datos.
Sí,
Se lo hace
bien.
más contundente.
Al cabo la maestra sí le gusta que aventemos los datos y ese.
Sí.
Ahora voy a hablar de una experiencia de la mía y les voy a opinar que bien.
Okay.
So, for example, I didn't know that planting some kind of fruit, vegetable, or whatever was so expensive or such a big responsibility. I talk with this because my family, or part of my mom, they live in Trancoso, so they have this land, and sometimes I say to my mom, why you don't plant anything? You have the land. And in that time I thought that that is very ¿cómo se dice? Very cheap. So in that time I thought that planting it was very cheap, but now, for example, my mother and my aunts, they don't have the knowledge to how they plant any kind of food, so they need to get someone that they know. So this is money. The seeds of the every food, I don't know, like beans, like corn, like any vegetable, any food, are expensive. And the main problem of this is that the government don't pay the subsidies, and they don't pay the real price of this. For example, we have that problem here in Zacatecas, the situation that happened with the farmers, with the beaners. So it's a very hard problem that we need to have this balance of how to use or how do the things. I don't know what you think about this.
Well, as we mentioned in the past chapters or topics, the government or the local government not always take the control or involve in these problems, because they don't be affected by the rise or the down of the prices. I consider the farmers want to sell their products to the private companies, but it's difficult because, as we know, exist people to create another ways to move their products. When this pass, exist people that they try to get into lying about the price. So the only way that the products or to receive money, they only expect to sell the government, but unfortunately they don't pay the real price.
Price. What do you think?
Or a good price.
Yes, a good price.
Also, I mean, related to all this situation, the security, because
Yes.
at least here in Mexico, they have to deal with these prices, but also if they have the chance to sell their product, they have to worry about the criminal organizations.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
For example, the avocado, nowadays the criminal organization take advantage or take the control for this product.
Yeah, because I mean, situations like that are it's something that it's not in charge of the FAO, but it is something that it's affected this food quality, these food
Systems.
conditions, even if it's not in charge of that organization.
Yeah.
Let's continue, partner.
So it's crazy to think about it that because at the same time millions of people are still hungry, but also food waste in environment as a problem. And why? Because producing food uses resources like water, energy, land. And when food is wasted, all those resources are wasted too. It's like you don't waste just an apple, you waste that the water, the land, and the energy that they use to produce that only apple. So the FAO also works on reducing food loss and waste across the whole supply chain, from production to transportation to consumption. So in conclusion, the climate change, the environmental damage, and the resource depletion don't stay in one country. They affect all the world, all the planet. So the FAO works with multiple countries, helping them create policies that and strategies to deal with the issues together. They also collect a lot of data and research, which helps governments make better decisions, because without information, it's really hard to solve problems at that scale.
Neither a miracle nor an absolute failure. The FAO is a mirror of our contradiction as a species. We know how to produce food, we know how to distribute it. The problem is that we haven't yet decided as a species that hunger is unacceptable. This was hunger, power, and the future. If you care about this, share it.
See you
In the next episode.
See you in the
No.
room.
See you.
Thanks for your time.